gas masks and hand grenades. Gas masks and hand grenades. Gas masks and hand grenades. Gas masks and hand grenades.
Hey, what is happening, everybody? Look at that. I was just on a stream on Kellen's channel, and in the blink of an eye, you've got more of me. I bet you can't wait. And actually, nobody's here yet, so we'll see how that works out. But usually these people start to leak in after 5-10 minutes. Look at what I've got here. This guy, I haven't seen this guy in quite a while. I'm trying to think of the last time we hung out on a stream.
Might actually have been that elitism stream.
January, dude. That is 9 months ago. Wow.
I know.
I think it was.
I was just starting my channel at that point too.
Yeah.
I had like one video down.
Well, you've got way more important stuff to do. And I mean, seriously, you're doing kind of a really cool thing because, man, I just happened to notice you're like 359 subs or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's growing.
You've grown considerably quicker than I did, Lee. I mean, now granted, I came in when I got up to about 140 and then disappeared for a very long time, and then kind of had periods where I did a bunch of stuff and then dropped out again for quite a long time. But
yeah,
that's impressive, dude. And you're doing, you're fulfilling a niche that no one else has really done before. You're bringing all these art. You talk about your channel. So
sure. Yeah. So for anybody watching, I run Heavy Art Talk, which is, it's basically a visual art related podcast / YouTube channel. So it definitely intersects a ton with the metal scene, as in most of the artists that I have on, we talk metal and they come from that. So, Mark Riddick, Matt Sticker, Brad Moore, Adam Burke, just to name a few. They've all been on the show, and they obviously have had a ton of credits in terms of merch and album art and things like that. So we basically nerd out about, what it's like to be a visual artist. We talk about techniques, talk about influences, definitely talk metal as well. It's just a really good hanging out opportunity. So most of the people who come to the show and come back, they're artists themselves. So that happens to be the more dedicated fan base for the channel so far.
Right.
But I'm about 16 episodes in. I got 4 just ready to go whenever. I'm trying to have a backlog, but it's been really fulfilling. It's been a great thing to add to this year, and I've been a huge fan of the YouTube metal scene since 2018. So I've been doing this from the viewer side for a long time, so it's cool to contribute in my own way.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember when we first dragged you into a live, probably in 21, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of came on and hung out with us, and I would always beat the living shit out of you for wanting to leave before midnight.
Yeah.
Going, dude.
Turn into a pumpkin, man.
56-year-old man, 30-year-old guy. What's wrong here? But the reality of it is that you're smarter than I am. So there you go. But yeah, so it's funny. I don't know that I've personally brought anyone specifically into the fold, but I think there's a lot of people that I've helped to, bring into the fold in terms of joining the group.
You brought me in. No, you can have that credit for sure.
No, but I mean, that was the reason that you started the channel. I mean, but it kind of all worked itself out, right? I mean,
yeah.
I've been one of those guys that's pretty open to allowing new people to join in. And then if I sense something's off, then usually my opinion is law and I go, out, see ya, no more.
Those make some entertaining episodes though.
Well, of course. Yeah. Well, I have, I'm not a what's that word? I'm not a wallflower, nor am I a lilting lily or whatever they call that. If I see that shit's not good, I call it we move on. I don't give a lot of people a lot of second chances. So you passed that test by far, and it's cool to see things happening for you. And I have to admit that, and I told you this, that I'm not the biggest like art dude. Like I'm not
Yeah.
art. My art is through my music and probably through my ability to communicate a lot and doing the interviews and doing the deep dives and things like that, talking about the music, writing my own music, which is coming soon. But I so it's been cool to watch you as a really good artist. And I'm not just saying that, you're a fantastic artist. And to watch you kind of get in your thing, your zone
Yeah.
with these other artists. I've watched a few. I've not watched all of them. I'm not gonna lie to you. And
Oh, I
like
wouldn't expect you to.
like you probably haven't caught every single thing I do because I throw a lot of content up, or I try to.
Yeah.
But the things that appeal to you, you gravitate towards, and you try to give them some attention. And I've done the same. And it's like, it's cool to watch you in your element with fellow travelers of that path. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thanks,
So
man.
very, very cool. So before we move into our dad episode, what are we here for? We're here for a dad episode. And Lee, what does dad stand for?
Definitive albums. Shit. What's the last D? Debate?
Deconstructed.
Just deconstructed. Yes.
Right. Or reconstructed, I guess you could say. And we went with Pink Floyd, which, you and Chuck have been my go-to prog nerd dudes, because you love metal, but you also love a lot of progressive rock and the classic progressive rock, and even some of the neo prog, and because we've done a couple deep dives on those bands like Yes and Genesis and Marillion come to mind right off the bat, King Crimson. And weirdly, I've rarely ever brought up Pink Floyd on my daily.
You just
travel.
think that they're oversaturated. That's the natural tendency, is to think they've already talked about too much.
Right.
At least that's what I would think.
Right, and they're a 70s band, and 70s, 80s band. And they've kind of been, for all intents and purposes, out of the public consciousness as far as releasing albums. I mean, they did that final tie-up thing with the Endless River, I think in 2013, 14, somewhere around there. And I've never heard that album. It's the only Pink Floyd album I have yet to check out. Don't know if I ever will, to be honest with you. But this was a band that, when we started, I was hitting you with the criteria of, look, you can't do a band we've already done. Like, I don't want to talk about any bands I've already done deep dives on, or anything else for that matter. And, I think, was this the first band you hit me with? I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think it probably was too.
And
it was definitely in like the first three.
Yeah.
It came pretty instantly to me.
Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. How have I not talked about Pink Floyd? Like in an episode or in, and right away it was like, yeah, let's do that. Now, you chose which album as your definitive album?
Dark Side of the Moon.
I chose Animals. Now, I have not listened to Pink Floyd many, many years, like regularly listened to them. There was a period of time in the 80s where I got to see Pink Floyd, what was the Rogerless Pink Floyd, I shall say, in 1983 or 4 for Momentary Lapse. Yep. I think that came out in 83, but I don't think they toured till 84, but I could be wrong. It might have been 83 this summer. So I saw them for that, and then I saw them on Division Bell with my ex-wife, whatever year that was. I don't remember when that was either. And so it was cool. I saw David, Rick, and Nick, and the whole insane, cool, overwhelming
it's like production and light show and everything.
Yes. Well, no, because for Momentary they had the big round screen with all the videos, and then they had during On the Run they had the plane come crashing in, and they did that then on Division, but Division Bell had the big giant monolith things on either side of the stage. So I saw the momentary I saw at what is now no longer there. It's actually it's actually the Link where the the Philadelphia Eagles play.
Yeah.
And I saw it at JFK was the stadium. It's torn down now, and replaced by the Link. And then I saw Division Bell at the Phillies' old stadium, which was I think it was called Veteran Stadium. I believe it was called. Now that's long gone too. And you know, for momentary, I was literally 20 feet back, right in front of David Gilmour, and wow. Yeah, it was just on the field, but it was like, oh my God! And then it started to rain during Echoes. And I went up in the stands and I just sat there. I was drunk. I had been drinking, but I was not imbibing other substances. And I had an out of body experience watching the rain come down and the lasers hit the rain, the red lasers hitting the rain and listening to echoes, man. It was just like
so cool.
It was like religious almost, almost. And then for Division, I went with my ex-wife, and it was a little different. We were, maybe 28, 38, 30 rows back or something on the floor of a massive stadium. And it felt a little bit less like I was, right there
in the zone. Yeah.
So anyway, but before we get into things, do you want to real quick say what's coming up on your channel? Anything you want to announce?
Well, every other week I have an episode released. So it's either going to be an interview, so one-on-one. And then I also have started doing panels. So it's multiple people. So, basically this is my method. And I think I've taken some of these things from like, Marty and you guys with like, you introduce someone in something that's a little lower risk. And then you bring a group on of people that have become your friends, basically. So
yep.
The panels, I'll have a panel episode coming out next couple of weeks that has James Balsama, Shindy Design, and Dan Goldsworthy on it. So all really, they're kind of like, and they're friends of mine, but they're probably like the up and comers, like kind of the current stable of really good full-time metal based like visual artists right now. Like all three of them kind of have that level right now, which is really good. And they're all extremely skilled. But yeah, just those type of episodes. I have a couple ideas that I'm thinking about, and I'll do like end of year lists as well, because that's going to do really well for the algorithm, and I'll play that game, just to get more subscribers and stuff. And I think it's interesting
I need to
stuff.
do that this year. Yeah.
I mean, do a top 20. I mean, I haven't been in the game so long that I'm burned out on it. And like my top 20 was my first video last year and still has one of the highest, it has the highest views of all mine. So yeah, sure. I'll play that game. I've
stayed away from doing the obvious, like throughout my channel's thing.
Yeah.
But like the viral videos, like so-and-so's contest or whatever, or that kind of stuff. But I fear to some degree that's kind of hurt me a little bit. That maybe if I just partook a little bit in that, it would accelerate me, because I'm getting close to 900. I think I'm at 830 or 832 or something like that. And it's like, man, it just seems like I'm not saying this arrogantly. It just seems like I should be doing better than that with what I put out there. So, so maybe I'll try that end of year thing or whatever, depending on if I'm here. But let's get into this, man. Oh, real quick, for me, this week looks like very strong chance that Wednesday night, I'm not going to say exactly what time just yet, but I think a very good chance that Wednesday night in the 8 to 10:30 realm Eastern time, looks like Paul Masvidal and Kelly Schaefer will finally be joining me. And that happened tonight while I was on with Kellen. And then, of course, Thursday night, I plan to do another dad with Serge. We're going to do Queensryche. I've got Rage for Order. I struggle, man. I keep thinking I'm making the wrong choices, like the warning, but He chose Promised Land, and I didn't even know Serge was a Queensryche fan. That was what was wild.
So no Mind Crime?
No Mind Crime, even though that's probably the definitive album.
Yeah. Somebody's got to pick the obvious. Like, that's how I see it.
Yeah, but see, I feel like, well, I'm not going to get into it. You'll have to watch to see my thinking about Rage.
Yeah, I feel you.
I think Rage is a better album than Mind Crime, to be honest with you, personally, but that's just me. And I like Mind Crime a lot, obviously. And I couldn't pick the EP because it's not a full album. But and then on next Sunday, next week, Eric Berg from Psychic Vacuum and I should be doing Vandergraaf Generator, where
Cool.
I get to actually bring out this thing and utilize this insanity, the 20 disc box set that I got a little while ago.
And it's what, like 5 of their albums, 6?
It's actually The Least We Can Do, Wave, HDHE, Pawn Arts, God Bluff, Still Life, World Record, The Quiet Zone, Pleasure Dome, Vital.
So that's pretty much all of them, right?
Blu-rays, yeah, pretty much all of them. And then Alive and Rimini, you get the Pawn Arts Sessions, you get World Record, Live at Maison de la, I don't know what the hell to pronounce that. And then you get the 3 Blu-rays with all the main big albums in 5.1 from, it's not Steven Wilson though.
That's a nice set, man.
I can't remember. Well, here's the deal, man. Like, this was a $350 set when it came out. And I never would have dropped that on this. I just wouldn't have. But Eric and I were talking about doing this band. I'm like, I only own 2 albums and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hang on a second. I go on Amazon, and that is not a good thing for me to do. When I'm in this kind of mode, that's the worst thing that I could do. And, dude, I pulled this set up, and it was $140.
Really?
That's a lot of money, don't get me wrong.
But that's pretty good value.
For that value, it's like $8. It's less than, I think it's about $6 a disc, which, it's got a book and all kinds of prints and all kinds of stuff. So, I've been a naughty boy lately. So, let's get into this thing, man. Look at this. Oh, I feel like I'm seeing double of Jeff tonight. He was almost in 2 places at once. Dude, I'm the magic man. That's where they wrote the heart song about. Yeah. All right, let's get into these albums here, Lee. And I'm going to you show Dark Side. We're going to start with you. And this came out on March 1st, 1973. How many versions do you have?
3. This is a newer remaster from, I don't even know, but I know it's a better edition.
Probably
06. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty current. And then these are just different presses, basically of like the same era. So these are early CDs. So the audio quality isn't quite as good. That's why I have one of these remasters. I mean, it's great because it's an excellent produced album, but it's not as good as it could be.
So the album comes out March 1st, 73, recorded May 31st, 72 through February 73 at EMI Studios in London. It was produced by Pink Floyd and came out on Harvest, which was their label, in the UK and Europe, and Capitol in the US. But on the producer's notes, it should be noted that the engineer on this album was one Alan Parsons from Alan Parsons Project. And many consider his production on this album some of the finest production ever put to tape. And I would find it almost impossible to argue that point. So real quick notes on this. They developed a lot of these tracks during live performances before recording began. It was conceived as a concept album that would focus on the pressures faced by the band during their arduous lifestyle and also deal with the mental health problems of former bandmate Syd Barrett, who departed the group in 1968. He didn't quite depart the band. They just stopped picking him up and bringing him to the practice sessions is really what happened.
It's like Milton from Office Space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Milton got relegated to the. We're gonna need that report, Milton. My stapler. The new material is recorded in 2 sessions in 7273 at EMI, now Abbey Road in London. Record builds on ideas explored in Floyd's earlier recordings and performances while omitting the extended instrumentals that characterized the band's earlier work. The group employed multi-track recording tape loops and analog synthesizers, including experimentation with the EMS, VCS3, and Synth IA. Engineer Alan Parsons was responsible for many of the sonic aspects of the recording and for the recruitment of session singer Claire Torrey, who appears on The Great Gig in the Sky. Dark Side of the Moon centers on the idea of madness, exploring themes such as conflict, greed, time, death, mental illness, and snippets from interviews with the band's roadies, road crew, and others are featured alongside philosophical quotations. The sleeve, which depicts a prismatic spectrum, was designed by, who was it designed by, Mr. Art Guy?
It's Hypnosis, right?
What's that?
Hypnosis.
And who's that guy? Storm
Thurgeson, right?
Ferguson, right. Who just died not too long ago, I think, a couple years ago, right? In response to keyboardist Richard Wright's request for a simple and bold design, which would represent the band's lighting and the album's themes. The album was promoted with 2 singles, Money and Us and Them. And here we go. I've already lost this. I'm going to admit it right now. I lose this game tonight. And I admitted, right, Lee? I admitted it.
Yeah, you admitted.
I said, dude, I think I made the wrong choice here, but I kind of knew it.
I told you that day one when we were messaging.
Right on. It's certified. This album is certified 14 times platinum in the UK and topped the US Billboard top LPs and tape chart, where it has charted for, as of this writing, 981 weeks. It's probably far more than that at this point. You may have a stat on that. As of 2013, years. The Dark Side of the Moon has sold over, this is fucking insane, 45 million albums. I'm thinking only Thriller, maybe the Black Album, although I don't think it's the Black Album. No, I don't think it's even close.
This is the number 3rd most sold album of all time. Rumors.
So what are the top 2?
I think Rumors and Thriller.
Rumors and Thriller, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and making it the best-selling album of the 70s, the 4th best. It's saying 4th best at this point, but it's probably accrued up there. In 2012, the album was selected for preservation in the United States National Recording Industry Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999. And I hadn't listened to this album in a long time. It's fucking mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. So tear me up. Do it, my friend. Jump into it. And any anecdotes you've got. I'm going to blow you up while I grab a beer, okay?
All right. I'll talk about a couple of trivia things that I found out.
Yeah, hit that and then do those first and then give me like 2 seconds. I'll be right back with a beer and you can get into the track by track.
Sure. So, yeah, this album cover, funnily enough, they decided on it just basically in between sessions. So they were recording. It was basically like a lunch break. All the band members went, Hypnosis presented, and then they immediately were like, oh, yeah, that one. It literally was like, hey, go over here, point. Yep, that's the album cover. And then now we have one of the most iconic album covers of all time that was decided within like 20 minutes. So I thought that was interesting. Another thing about Pink Floyd that's pretty cool is, so in those early years, their entire sound was shaped by Syd Barrett, and he was like the muse. He was like the artistic leader. And when they lost him, they were pretty aimless for a while. And you can tell with like albums like Uma Guma and, like Obscured by Clouds and stuff, they didn't really know exactly what they wanted to do. But when they did record Echoes on Metal, that was like a pivotal point for them. It like opened up the doors on what they actually wanted to do. So believe it or not, these songs were all written over the course of like 3 or 4 years, and they were jammed live. So they were figuring out the songs on the road, performing them live, kind of like what, Grateful Dead does. And that was pretty unheard of for Pink Floyd, who usually was just like tinkering around the studio, spending a shit ton of money and figuring things out. So they really developed these songs organically. And the fact that they all run into each other, that's an idea that Roger Waters had that actually was a good idea. because Pink Floyd, they like to think first about an overarching concept or a way of executing music, but to truly have all the songs come together, that's what makes this, particularly spectacular. Like, for instance, Pink Floyd, they got fixated on this idea of like house-made instruments. So like they'd put like rubber bands on pens and they would record that, and they'd put a shit ton of reverb and effects, and then someone else would be hitting pans, and they spent close to $1 million on that experiment, and they kept coming back to it and back to it and back to it. As an artist, sometimes you don't even realize that you just need to sometimes know when to hold them and when to fold them with ideas. And the whole ready-made instrument thing, they just never really, they tried that like 3 different times in their like artistic progression. It just never kind of left them. But, they did a little bit of that on Uma Guma, but, I thought that was an interesting factoid. So enough trivia.
Yeah, I mean, also keep in mind that back in the 70s, record companies were kind of a little more forgiving in the fact that they would allow artists to kind of go in and become artists or be creative artists. You could never get away with that in the 80s and 90s. I mean, the cost of doing that kind of shit would be absurd. And just, yeah, it's hard to believe that they kind of could do that kind of thing back then, right?
In 2023 dollars, I could be wrong and I could be underestimating it, but it was like $1 million to record this. In 2023, that'd be like 6 million at least.
Oh yeah, insane.
So like that's insane.
And the crazy thing is that album has probably made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions. Maybe we're even talking the B word potentially.
Yeah.
If you look at all things considered, not just the record sales itself, but the concerts, the T-shirts, the merchandising, the branding of the band, and really, we talk a lot about how the Beatles only were a band for less than 10 years, but Floyd was only really a recording, releasing albums with Roger as a band.
Yeah.
From 67 through 80.
83 81. With Final Cut.
Oh, was that 83?
I think so.
Are you
79 was The Wall. Yeah. I think I looked it up earlier.
The Wall was 81?
No, The Wall was 79.
79. And then
they had a bit of a break.
I thought the Final Cut was 81. It's 83.
Let me look. Yeah, 83, March.
Is it? Okay. But the thing about that album is, though, by that time, they'd already pretty much broken up anyways, because David was barely on the album. Rick Wright wasn't on the album at all. Nick Mason was. It was a Roger Waters solo. It was essentially the first Roger Waters solo album in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And sidebar conversation, I think it's a brilliant album for the most part. I really love that album. But it wasn't really a Pink Floyd album, I don't think.
No. It fit in more with, Waters solo stuff, which I really like. Like I like Hitchhiker a lot, or Hitchhiker.
Pros and Cons is good. I'm not a Roger's kind of up and down for me in a lot of ways. But I mean, the final, so 83, but they really weren't a band after about 80. I mean, after they did the tours for The Wall, they pretty much ended as far as they weren't talking to each other for the most part. And it was kind of done. So 13 years, not, a 40-year period, or 50 years for the Stones, or, you know what I mean? Some of these bands.
There's 2 distinct periods as well.
Right.
You can only, it's what, 8 years of like the most known Pink Floyd stuff.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. That run was in there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, before we head out, I'm drinking a pumpkin.
Oh, dude, I love those. They were
ale.
Super expensive.
Dogfish. Yeah, $12 for a 6-pack. Yeah.
Dude, it was fucking 15 at Whole Foods. I didn't buy that. I wanted it, but I didn't buy it.
Well, I only allow myself one per stream. So you know me, I don't really get hammered on streams and drink a lot, but I thought, you know what, I'll break one of these out. So that's pretty good. So why don't we get into the track by track here on this album, and
Sure.
you kind of go through and tell me where you're at with everything, and any anecdotes. And I did mention to you that it's kind of becoming a kind of a fun thing to do the banger, omega banger, tweener banger, blah blah blah. I don't expect you necessarily to do it. I'll do it just simply to be that character. But if
Yeah.
you want to do it, by all means.
I mean, I'll try my best. I don't know the exact, hierarchy here, but
Well, the hierarchy is a banger is just a solid track. A tweener banger is another level up. A mega banger is like, damn, indispensable, got to be on there. An alpha omega banger, which frankly, Logan in the chat coined that the other night. So I take advice from my my panel and my buddies and everything. And the alpha omega banger is like that's an all world track. That's a classical track. That's a stone cold lock for one of the greatest tracks ever.
Okay. Well, this one definitely has a couple alpha omegas, I'd say. I mean, here's
the problem
thing.
with this is it's got a lot of both these albums have a lot of omegas and megas, right?
I don't really think there's a second wasted on this album necessarily. Like everything has a purpose, and it's hard to separate the songs out because yes, they go into one another, but they shift the mood. They offer that type of peak and valley that you want. It's extremely dynamic album, so it is hard to separate out each track. And I think it's also like I want to talk like holistically about this album. One of the reasons why I think it's definitive is it's the first one you introduce to someone. So if no one's ever heard Pink Floyd, you have like a 16-year-old cousin or something, this is the first thing I'm showing them. And I have to give them kind of like a lay of the land in terms of what to expect. But, this album, when I first found it in high school, I mean, the first half is all about, from my understanding, talking about one side of madness, and the second half is talking about another side. So the first half is talking about madness as a sense of falling in line. So, like, in some ways, I feel like in my life, I have kind of fallen in line. I've had a fairly normal life. I'm married. I have a 9-to-5 job. I do art and all that stuff, but my life is fairly routine and normal. I've kind of like fallen into the trap that this album has kind of warned me of if you only have one life to live, why don't you take more chances? Why don't you live a more exciting life? Yeah. So when you find it at 16, that's when you're idealistic. That's when you're thinking, man, I can be somebody, you got all that vigor and you're like, everything's just like pie in the sky. Like I can conquer anything. I know all the answers. And it like speaks to you because it's like, I can escape this destiny that I don't have to have. But then what you find is, lyrically, every time I hear it, I'm like, man, I've done it. I'm digging the hole every day. I'm right back to kind of what it's saying. I'm 32 and my life is pretty normal. So that really appeals to me because this album ages like fine wine because no matter where you are at in your life's journey, you can relate to those lyrics. And then the second half, talks about the other form of insanity, which is you feel like you figured out what life's all about, but it presents as insanity because you're trying to convince other people to not live a normal life, which in itself is a form of insanity. So it's very interesting. So track by track, it starts with Speak to Me, which is a great intro track, goes right into Breathe, which, that inhale, exhale of it, it's very meditative. It plays on classic rock radio all the time, and I think it works just fine that way. Excellent guitar work. I love Dave Gilmour's vocals on this album in particular. It's just amazing. Like exactly what you want to hear. Yep. Nick Mason, I think, is like the perfect drummer for this band. He doesn't get a lot of like shout outs, but his kind of like, rolling, like all the toms, and it's just like always kind of that, eighth note, got some really cool, tasteful like rests in between his fills. He just plays exactly what you need to, feel the feeling of the music.
Yeah, Pink Floyd would have been very weird if Neil Peart had played for them, or
yeah,
wouldn't have worked.
Nick Mason's got that great level of like slight jazziness to his playing, but has so much restraint. On the Run, if I'm going to be critical now, this is one of my top 3 favorite albums of all time. So it feels wrong to be critical at all. But if On the Run was maybe 10 seconds shorter, that would be okay with me. 10 seconds, like not a big deal. Like it serves a purpose. It's the falling down the rabbit hole to take you into time,
Well,
so it.
Now, did you dig into this track at all? Did you talk about this while I was away?
No, please.
So On the Run was a track that essentially was utilizing new technology at the time. They were using the EMS Synthi AKS sequencer. It was an 8-note sequence that apparently they got it. I don't know if Rick got it or who got it. The studio had it, whatever. And Gilmour was kind of monkeying around with it, not really knowing what the hell he was doing. And Roger came over, and I was surprised. I thought Rick wrote this, but actually Roger wrote this. And it's an 8-note sequence at 165 BPM. Also, the Synthi and VCS3, which is the VCS3 is a synthesizer of the era, is peppered in and out, but it's that. And then you've got the, all the panning and the really cool the slide stuff. That's that panning, that feeling of movement is created by a backwards guitar with a mic stand that was ran over the neck of the guitar and then sped up. And Roger, was the one that created the pattern, which kind of surprised me a little bit. And originally what they had planned for this was actually a jam, a guitar jam was the original piece that was what they had planned. And they, because of Gilmour monkeying around with this and Roger hearing it and go, wait, wonder if we did this, that changed the whole context of that track. And it became, they weren't happy with the extended guitar jam as the linkage because it was supposed to convey movement.
Yeah.
Of all of they're constantly flying here, flying there, going, get in the car, go to the gig, get in the car, go to the hotel, whatever, get in the car.
It definitely does.
Huh?
I said it definitely does.
Yeah. And so it definitely kind of gives you that vibe. And I found that incredibly interesting. I never thought to look up, like, what exactly is Rick Wright using there? Well, it wasn't actually Rick. It was Roger. And those were the actual synthetic devices they were using to create that thing. And you say it could be 10 seconds shorter. I don't know that I could get that granular with it.
Well, that's me being super petty. I
Right.
really can't make that many criticisms on the album. I'm just trying to find anything.
But when you actually hear that song and you think about it in the context of what was coming out in 1973, it's mind-blowing because it was just the only other bands, or like, I don't want to call them bands, I guess they were, but the only other musicians that were really using sequencers were the Kraftwerks, the Tangerine Dreams, the Krautrock synthesizer bands, those kind of weirdo hippie synthesizer bands. And in particular in 73, you've got, I believe, Rubicon from Tangerine, because Fader was 72. 73, I think, was Rubicon or Ricochet. No, Ricochet was 75. Anyway, you're just doing something there that was never heard before. And, I hadn't heard this album, like I said, in don't know, 6, 7, 8 years. I just don't know. Could be 10. I don't know. And yet, man, this was like putting all the tracks, but the album as a whole, but this one in particular was like putting on, a real comfortable pair of slippers, man, and going, yeah, oh yeah. It wasn't like I went, oh God, I've heard this a million times.
No.
Nope, not at all.
No.
So go ahead.
I mean, I've listened to it 4 times this week, and I'm getting probably closer to that thought than I ever have had. But even then, I could listen to it just about every other day. What you're talking about too really lends itself to, Roger Waters is kind of a prick, right? Like everyone kind of knows it. Like the guy's kind of mean, and I don't think he was the best bandmate, but he had a broader vision of what the band could be more than anyone else did.
Absolutely.
He's not an amazing bass player. He's not an amazing singer. He's a good lyricist, but he saw the bigger picture that no one else saw.
Yeah, he's the visionary of the band.
Yeah. And like not in a pretentious way, like he legit is.
No, and I mean, lyrically, he did write a lot of the lyrics in this band, and he wrote a lot of the music. So when you say, well, he's not that great of a bass player, I don't know that I'd agree with that, in all honesty. Is he Geddy Lee? No. But he didn't have to be in this band. He didn't have to be
That's
Geddy
what
Lee.
I mean. He's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't about musical chops.
No, it wasn't. No. Really, sacrilege as it may sound, David Gilmour is one of my top 5, 10 favorite guitar players. Not because he's technically that much more skilled than X, Y, or Z guitar player. Mainly because of his tone and his feel and the way that he could string notes together. He didn't need to be Yngwie or Eddie or Uli or any of those guys. He had to be David Gilmour. Same goes for Nick and Rick. Rick was probably the most musically, what's the word I'm looking for here? Skilled.
Yeah.
As a player. But again, he didn't need to show off chops. It was the greater good was towards serving the song and the albums and creating the whole big picture, and not the, hey, look at me, Mom, I can wank on this thing. And yes, a lot of people, if you say, well, what do you remember? What's the first thing that jumps out when you talk about Pink Floyd? Like, as the musicians, a lot of people would probably say, well, it's the incredible feel, as Wages said, of David Gilmour's guitar solos. And I would agree with that. And the dynamic between him and Roger singing, and Rick as well.
Right.
Don't want to leave Rick out. Very important part there. But yeah, you're right. Roger wasn't Geddy Lee, but he didn't have to be. And man, dude, he's written a metric fuck ton of incredible songs. So there's that, right?
Yeah. You want me to pick up with the tracks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Time, obviously amazing. I could be mistaken. I was watching the documentary a couple of days ago, but I'm getting some of my facts mixed up. But I think the idea for the clocks was Parsons.
It was.
Yeah. Amazing track. For some odd reason right now, I have all the songs stuck in my head of this album, like playing in my head, except this one. So I'm actually having trouble remembering, like, it just like right offhand exactly everything.
You got the boom, boom.
Yeah, okay.
Boom, boom,
But digging away.
Digging away.
Okay, yes. Sorry, I had like Us and Them stuck in my head, and when you have a song stuck in your head, it's hard to think of another one,
And the crazy thing about that song is you get the that verse, and then you go into that amazing transition into that chorus where it's and then you find that 10 years is, I don't know the words.
Yes.
I could, but Jesus, it's like, what the hell, man? Like, and a quick note on those clock sounds that we hear at the beginning, all the ticking, and That was done with tape, remember. This is analog 2-inch tape. And they actually had tape strung throughout the studio in like many feet long lengths, 20, 30, 40 feet of them feeding the tape loops of these clock sounds and chimes and ticking and all that stuff into the Studer, I think it is, the reel to reel, and they're literally were using like again mic stands to wrap the shit around and unwinding it, and just stunning, uh, just
Yeah.
mind blowing when you read about that and you hear that. It's like, and there's a video out there somewhere. I'm sure you can find it easily of Alan Parsons talking about creating that. It's just and
Such
if
a
you
cool
don't know
story.
Alan Parsons Project, you should. There's a lot of killer albums that
I, Robot.
Yeah, iRobot's insanely good. Tales of Mystery and Imagination, insanely good. Turn of a Friendly Card, a lot of really incredible albums there. But where he got his start was as a tape op engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So we're at time.
But yeah, I mean, so far, perfect album. Great Gig in the Sky. Just it's so funny that when Claire actually went into the studio and she laid down that legendary vocal track, they literally had like no reaction, and she thought that they hated it. So she went out of the vocal booth, and it's just like, okay, bye. And then later she finds out it's on the album, and then obviously the album blows up, and it ends up being pretty litigious, and she does win to get composition credit for that song. So she gets royalties now.
Did she not get? She got paid, didn't she?
She got paid for the session, but she didn't get paid.
Oh, she didn't get a residual or a composition thing for her,
which she deserved, man. I mean, if it wasn't for her vocals, the track would be not near as memorable. So I think it's totally justified, and she got a lot of back pay from that. And I think that's like an example of, because you hear all these music court cases, some of them, especially recently, have been a little bit of a stretch, and I'm glad.
Right.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but this one I think worked in the favor of the artist and was a good one to win.
I think.
But yeah,
I will tell you,
track.
Her vocal contribution is right up there in importance with Mary Clayton for "Gimme Shelter."
Oh yeah.
The red banner, it's just a shadow away. I can't do those high vocals, but it's as important to that song as those are two, like, to me, iconic female vocals on massive rock tracks, right?
But like the thing that's so cool about this vocal performance too is like it goes up and it goes, really, really soft and down. Like she feeds off the dynamics of the musicians so well that it's, like Robert Fripp, he was talking about like how there could never be another In the Court of the Crimson King because the muse for that album
was there and then
blew away and then it went somewhere else.
Yeah.
The muse was here in many occasions.
Yeah.
There's no denying it. It's serendipitous. Like you can't intentionally write music this good. You really can't. It just kind of has to happen. So, Money, that's probably the song that we've all heard probably too many times, if any, but it's still amazing. When they're actually, when they were trying to figure that one out on the road, they had a really disastrous gig where they were completely off the 7. And I heard some of the, performance. It was so fucking bad. They couldn't find their way back to the 1. Yeah. They couldn't find their way back to the 1. And it sounded like complete dog shit. Yeah. They bombed it live. And this was before the album came out. This is when they were trying to figure shit out.
Was she singing on it? Or did they have another vocalist?
No, I'm talking about Money right now.
Oh, you're talking about Money.
I moved to Money. Yeah, because they got off the cash register sounds.
Yeah. Oh, right. The cash register was the kind of the click.
Right. So they got off the 1, and Nick wasn't able to find his way back and then get everybody else on. So they bombed in front of 20,000 people.
Yeah, it's a tricky song. What's that in? Time
7/4.
7/4. Yeah. Dum, doo, doo, dum,
Doom, doom,
bum,
doom,
bum,
doom,
bum, bum,
doom.
doo,
Yeah.
doo, bum. Yeah.
Gotta disagree with you, Mark, but appreciate you watching. But I mean, Money, I think if there's one track that's maybe just a hair long, maybe Money could be that. But even then, there's an awesome sax solo, great guitar work. It's a
It's
special
my
song.
one track on the album that I'm cool not hearing, but yet I hadn't heard it in 10 years. And as soon as I heard it, I'm like, yeah, that's a fucking brilliant song, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to skip it if it comes on the radio.
Yeah, exactly.
Us and Them is probably one of my favorite tracks, of all time.
Amazing.
I love the chorus and how it just builds, and like that's perfect production. When and there's another example. Is that Claire again on vocals or other backing vocals? But it's very much lifted by those.
I can look.
That's I think Money and Us and Them are the longest tracks of the album. Us and Them just like perfect length.
Close to 8 minutes, right? 7 and change.
Perfect track. It has so many different feelings to it. It's very much like I don't know. I find it kind of like a romantic song, but it's also where I was.
No, it's Doris Troy.
Yeah, but she does an excellent job as well. And going back to Great and This Guy too, of course, that's an excellent piano performance by Rick. And it was Alan Parsons' idea to have Rick play piano instead of organ as he originally was. And I think that was another astute change. So Parsons, just came in with the good suggestions. Back on track, Any Color You Like, just like kind of like hippie, like jam. Just like it feels very lively and jammy. Really cool guitar tones. Interesting percussive playing by David Gilmour. I love that part when it's like in the middle. It's like wait. It's like panning guitars, and then it's with the drums. It's kind of hard for me to do vocally, but just really cool, like minimal playing from Nick Mason on that track. I always really liked. Brain Damage. At first, I didn't really understand the beginning part that much, but when it goes into the end and it's brings up the actual Dark Side of the Moon lyrics, like that's obviously a really special moment. But like that's, if there's any track that's probably kind of like semi-weak in the first 30 seconds, it would be that one for me. But like I said, serves its purpose. Favorite albums of all time. And then Eclipse just kind of brings it all home. I think Eclipse personally is a little too short. I wish it was about a minute longer.
I agree.
So that's like another critique. That one, that's so I firmly believe in that critique. All the other ones, they're pretty wishy-washy, frankly. But that one, I think they should have let it resolve just a little bit more, personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, fantastic album.
And that's a 10 out of 10 for you, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. I mean, top 3 albums of all time for me. And I know, like, and I've seen even a couple of the comments that have popped up here. I forgot to open up the YouTube tab, but I'm just looking at them here. Like, I get that it's like overrated in the sense of like everyone says it's one of the best albums ever, but like it just kind of is.
It is.
Like, I'm not trying to be basic. I'm just also not going to lie when I feel like this is something truly special. It
is. It's what did I say to you when I hit you up? I'm like, dude, I haven't listened to this album in, well, let me see. I was, again, I have not listened to this album in a long time. And I just was like, here. Here's what I said. Jesus, Dark Side is a fucking masterpiece. I still prefer Animals by a smidge, but yeah, think I capitulate defeat before we even start. Just a fucking genius album in every way. And that's the reality of it. And it's like, there's not, like you said it best. There's really not a second of it that's wasted. And other than 10 seconds of On the Run, I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah, I mean, if anything,
But for me, I would say every track on here is a mega banger. Although the I would say like the intro and the outro, like you said, I agree with you about Eclipse being a little longer. It could have and should have been. But I think that the only track on here that I do kind of forget about is "Speak to Me" at the beginning. Like for some reason that one's eluding me right now.
Well, it just goes right into "Breathe." That's the thing. Is it feels like one track really.
It kind of drifts in at the very beginning, and then it starts with "Breathe." And "Breathe" is just such a beautiful song, and it's weird. I'm looking at it right now, and it's only 2:49, and I could have swore it was much longer than that, but it's not.
Nope.
And it's just the way that Gilmour sings it.
Yep.
He's just got such a beautiful, breathy delivery that is harmonically and melodically kind of almost soothing. And,
he's a very expressive voice, man.
Yeah,
like you see that, but then think of the kind of peak intensity part of Time. He has a little rasp in his voice.
Yeah, where he does a breaking away.
Yeah.
To make up the death dog days. Yeah.
Or even later when he's like, the line that's "but you're sinking." He's like, I don't know exactly what he's saying there, but
oh yeah, but you're sinking.
Yeah.
One step closer to death.
Yeah.
And it's like, but then he does the well, jumping ahead, but he does the chorus, which is I don't know if it's him or Rick Wright. It sort of sounds a little bit like Rick, where it does it.
I should pull up the lyrics. It's amazing how you like can sing along, but when you don't have the track with you, you just feel like
usually do sing-alongs, and I thought I wouldn't do that to you tonight.
Yeah, thanks for sparing me.
Because I've been talking so much today, I'm like, my voice is pretty trash. But yeah, and then On the Run, we talked about it at length. Super cool that that sequence synth bit, and then Time is just wow. I think Rick is singing on that song. I'm almost sure of it. I think he does the
it's a different tonality.
Yeah, it's got Rick has a gorgeous voice, and it's like what do the lyrics say for over the chorus?
So that part?
Yeah, did you pull that up?
Yeah. Every year is getting shorter, never seem to find the time. Plans that either come to naught or half a page of scribbled lines. I'm a terrible singer, but
yeah, and then one day you find 10 years of what gone behind or whatever.
Yeah.
No one told you when to run. You miss the starting gun. Bow,
but like, dude, such good lyrics.
The solo on this song is so fucking mega epic. It's just get out of here, man. That is a alpha omega alpha banger right there.
Yeah,
that's
agreed.
All the rest of them are bangers, and Breathe is probably close to that. The Great Gig in the Sky is an alpha because Claire is just out of her mind on that. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful song. All together, it's just amazing. And Rick Wright wrote that. It's just, it just shows how important Rick Wright was as an early writer, early on. Money, as you said, that's the one song I could be like, well, if it wasn't on there, but let's be honest, if it wasn't on the album, it wouldn't be Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah. So it's a brilliant song. And we talk about the bass playing of Waters. I mean, it's not a complicated bass riff, but it's so catchy. Boom, 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 boom.
Good vocal performance again from Dave.
Money. And that's Gilmour again.
Yeah.
Singing on that. I mean, really, Gilmour is all over this album, and I kind of forgot that in a weird way.
Yeah. When you lose that after Wish You Were Here, you really kind of completely lose that.
Yeah, because until The Wall, where he has a couple of the big standout tracks, but generally speaking, most of animals, other than dogs, is pretty much all Roger.
Dude, Animals, he has one songwriting credit. Waters has all the others.
Right.
And Rick have none.
Exactly. Because Roger started to kind of take over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what bred a lot of the dissension eventually. So, I mean, if you listen to Waters, he says it's because the rest of those guys didn't want to pull their weight and I had to do it all for them. You listen to them, it's like, well, Roger became a dictator and we had to do whatever he said. So where does the truth lie? Who knows, right? Okay, so Us and Them, man, what an amazingly beautiful song. Mega, Omega, Alpha, whatever you want to say. It's just beyond. It's just so beautiful, man. And when he's doing the la, 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 and who knows who, and da, 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 da. And then it gets into da, 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 da. I should know these words, I just don't. That part of the song is absolutely mind-blowing how killer it is. It's just
good use of sax too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the sax on this album, on this song is amazing. And then you got the instrumental Any Color You Like, which is a banger. And then you get into Brain Damage, and man, I love Brain Damage, man. It's just those neat little almost sounds like you're in a fun house with the guitars initially, and you get the the lunatic is on the grass.
Yeah.
And just the way it's sung is just so incredible. And then we get to the refrain, I see you on the dark side of the moon. It's just absolutely stellar. And Eclipse, as you said, really could have been, when they're talking through and you're hearing the
it wraps everything up, man.
Yeah, it does. It's just a brilliant album, and 10 out of 10 for me, easy 10 out of 10 all day long. I love this album. And because it sold so incredibly and stayed on Billboard forever and may still be there for all I know. I didn't look into that, but it probably is. Although I think I read somewhere a while
14
back.
14 years on Billboard.
How much?
14 years.
Okay, so it did finally drop off eventually.
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing is about this album, maybe not in the streaming age, but it still has to be selling a lot of albums still to this day.
I hope the next generation loves this album.
Yeah.
It should carry on.
My daughter, Lauren, Lauren too, but Maddie, is a massive Pink Floyd fan, and she got that from the influence I had on her at that time. And, this album is her favorite. So, and I want to tell a real quick story about how I first heard this album. So, 1976, I'm an old guy. So, 1976, I moved from where I live now, Lancaster, Pennsylvania area, down to Houston. My stepdad got a job at Brown and Root, an engineering company, and we move into this neighborhood where everybody's a transplant. Everybody's from somewhere else. And I move in next to this family from Jersey, and they're it's a Greek father, very Greek, a French wife, mother, and then the two girls, Anna and Lainey, were like, Anna was like 3 years younger than me, and Lainey was like 2 years younger than my brother. And so we'd go over and swim in their pool. They had an above ground pool, and one day I go over, we maybe were living there a couple months, and I go over, and my stepdad, who passed away, Jerry, and George had become good buddies, and we go in the house, and my stepdad was very much into like Charlie Rich, Gordon Lightfoot, Neil Diamond, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Not really a rock guy. Like, I never heard him talking about the Stones or, those bands, Floyd or anything, Yes or anything. And George says, and I got a feeling George probably smoked weed back then. I'm not sure, but I think he probably did. He's like, Jerry, have you heard of this band? And he holds up Dark Side of the Moon. Now, this is 1976. so the album's out about 3 years, right? This is, I want to say, April or May of 76. I am now 10, maybe on the road to 11. I am into Kiss. Kiss Alive has entered my purview right before we leave. I am
Nice.
kind of into Jethro Tull with Aqualung, and Yes with and Zeppelin, of course, Zeppelin 4. So I don't know this band Pink Floyd. I've never heard of them, right? And George puts on Dark Side of the Moon. I have to say thank you, George, wherever you're at, man, because you exposed this young, impressionable kid that was falling in love with music and rock music and the whole trappings and aura of music. And I was starting to learn guitar, and you brought that into my sphere, man. And so thank you, George. But that's where I first heard this album, and it's been with me all my life since. You know, it's just always been there, and it's just an amazing album. So for me, really, I could say honestly that all these songs are Alpha Omega bangers, but they're super, you know, they're mega bangers for the whole way throughout. 10 out of 10 albums. So just an amazing album. So next up on my side here, we've got the Animals album. Now, you might be like, well, how could you pick that album, Jeff? Well, for starters, we wouldn't have had a series if I just said, well, yeah, you know. I will say that Animals is my favorite album. So maybe I've got that bias going for it. And I do think that in some respects, it's a little bit more of a complete album in that we don't have a couple of those interlude tracks that are maybe not as integral, but they are important, right? So you have an intro and an outro section, but you have this another concept album and a much more flushed out concept overall in that this is the 10th studio album, comes out 77 January 21st through Harvest in Columbia, self-produced Britannia Rose Studios in throughout 76. The album continued the long-form compositions that made up the previous work, including Wish You Were Here, which could have also been one of the dad albums.
Yeah.
Animals is both a progressive rock album and a concept album focusing on social political conditions of the 70s Britain, and was a change from the style of Floyd's the style of and was a change from the style of Pink Floyd's work. Tension within the band during production culminated in keyboardist Richard Wright being fired 2 years later. The album's cover, conceived by the band's bassist and lead songwriter Roger Waters and designed by Storm Thorgerson, shows an inflatable pig floating between two chimneys of Battersea Power Station. Pink Floyd released no singles from Animals, but promoted it through the In the Flesh tour. Waters' agitation with audiences during their tour inspired their next album, The Wall. Animals reached number 2 in the UK, number 3 in the US, and initially received mixed reviews, but gained more favorable reviews in later years and is considered one of the band's best works. Loosely based on Animal Farm by George Orwell, the lyrics describe various classes in society as different kinds of animals. The predatory dogs, the despotic, ruthless pigs, and the mindless, unquestioning herd of sheep. We have some of those in our country now, quite a lot of them. But anyways, I'll digress. Whereas the novella focuses on Stalinism, the album is a critique of capitalism and differs again in that the sheep eventually rise up to overpower the dogs. The album was developed from a collection of unrelated songs into a concept in which the words of author Glenn Povney describe the apparent social and moral decay of society, likening the human condition to that of mere animals. Apart from its critique of capitalist society, the album also is partly in response to the punk rock movement, which grew in popularity as a nihilistic statement against the prevailing social and political conditions, and also a reaction to the general complacency and nostalgia that appeared to surround rock music. Pink Floyd were an obvious target for punk musicians, notably Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols, who wore a Pink Floyd t-shirt on which the words were written, "I hate," had been written in ink. Rotten was noted on several occasions that has noted on several occasions that he did it for a laugh. He was, in fact, a fan of several progressive rock bands, including Magma and Vandergraaf. Drummer Nick Mason later stated that he welcomed the punk rock insurrection and viewed it as a welcome return to the underground scene from which Pink Floyd originated. In 1977, he produced the Damned's second album, Music for Pleasure, at Britannia Row after they failed to entice the retired Syd Barrett to the role. I think it should be noted that some of these tracks actually were kind of in play, if I'm not incorrect about this, back as far back as Atom Heart Mother. The song Sheep, if I'm not incorrect, was originally titled Raving and Drooling. And there's another one, Dogs. God, what was that called? Son of a bitch. I can't remember. They actually played these live before they ever went in and recorded these songs and changed the titles of them. And I actually have a literally, no joke, all puns aside, I literally have about 40 or 50 full Pink Floyd bootlegs going as far back as the 65, 66.
Oh, that's cool.
And one of them, and I didn't pull it and I can't remember the name. I'd have to look this up and I didn't look it up. Maybe you can. Well, I will when you do your critique. But I believe it was Dogs, was called something else. And they played these on the Atom Heart Mother tour. And they kind of then shaped them into what they became. And was it one was called Looking Through a Knot Hole in Granny's Wooden Leg?
I've never heard this before.
I think it might have been. Oh, that's it. You've got to be crazy. That's it. You got to be crazy. You got to have a real need. Yep. You got it. That's right. So there you go. The thing, Mark, I'm not going to deal with the mass talk, dude. So just take that somewhere else, brother. Take it somewhere else now. Don't say anything more like that or you'll be gone. If you don't like that, then leave now because I'm not going to hear that bullshit. Not here, not in my home. So the reality is that those tracks kind of existed in a vacuum earlier before they actually went and recorded them. And so you've got 5 tracks. You've got, you got Pigs on the Wing Part 1. You got Dogs. You got Pigs, 3 different ones. And you got Sheep. And then you've got Pigs on the Wing Part 2. And, Pigs on the Wing is just a short little intro, acoustic little thing. And so if you didn't care what happened to me, and, the fortune and pain. And, it's just kind of an opening salvo to get things started with the transition into Dogs. And really, this album really, to me, consists of 3 main tracks. And it's those 3 central tracks that make up the whole entirety of the album. Yeah. And, basically, they're flawless to me. They're flawless tracks to me. Dogs is absolutely fucking amazing. I guess if I had to pick a favorite track on the album, that would be the track. It's stunning. And, it's David Gilmour's track for the most part. His vocals are incredible on it. The guitar playing on it and the atmospherics on it are just amazing. When you start out with the acoustic bit and you're doing that, those chords are so cool. I can actually play that, but unfortunately, my guitar is a piece of shit. So we gotta wait till I get that Taylor coming up soon.
It's very haunting,
but it's such a haunting, cool sounding intro to this track and then we get into the electric part of it with the he's doing the it's and then the atmospherics of Rick in the background adding such flavorful, cool, keyboard atmospherics and everybody in that pocket. man, it's just, dude, that's an Omega banger all day long, every day, and 10 times on Sundays. It's just insanely good. And you've got some of Dave Gilmour's most tasteful guitar playing on that track. It's just stunningly amazing. And no matter, I hadn't listened to this in quite a long time, and it was like, wow, holy crap, man. Like, this is just
It's a
mind
journey
blowing.
too. 17 minutes long.
17 minutes, right? Which I don't know if how long. No, Metal was longer than that, right? Echoes was longer than that, right? I think Echoes
it might even go to 20, but
I was going to say it's around 19 or 20 for that, yeah. But Echoes is a lot of noodling, right? It's a lot of noodling. You don't get that so much with Dogs. Dogs is very, it's
23 and a half
sexualized.
minutes.
How much? 21.
23 and a half.
Oh, it's 23. Wow, holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize it was that long. I was always thinking it was like 20. And it's a brilliant song, but there's a lot of kind of noodling in that track that you don't have so much in Dogs, right?
There's a lot of space in Dogs,
Yeah,
it takes its time.
Yeah, love that song, love it, love it, love it. And then we get into Pigs, 3 different ones, and that's really the acerbic, angry track on the album, right? It's Roger really just spitting all that bile and hatred towards the capitalist out there, the ruling class, right? Which is ironic because Roger's part of that ruling class now. I mean, pretty much, right? He's one of those guys, although he's not a politician. He pretty much hates politicians. And Pigs, it's I'm trying to get my dun 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 down, banana out down, banana out down, banana, and then you've got the wah 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 wah. You got all that pig squealing stuff going on with the squawk box and the fucking wah wah and everything, and you're like, think man, pink man, ha ha, she ride you up, bow now 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 now. Brilliant fucking song, man. A mega banger. A mega Omega banger. And then we get to Sheep, which is kind of the, it starts out with the vocoder and the kind of, the I'm trying to remember how that one goes now. Why am I blanking out?
Well, it's got the Richard Wright. It's like a clavinet kind of.
Yeah, the clavinet. But what's the melody line of it?
Of like the vocal?
Yeah.
I'm getting it mixed up with Pigs right now.
Yeah, I'm getting them mixed up too. Shit.
This is the one that has the prominent cowbell, right? It's in the like kind of drum beat. I can't really sing it.
No,
or is that Pig?
The cowbell's in Pigs, 3 different ones. Hold on.
Got it. Yeah, I'm getting them mixed up.
Hang on. I'll get it. Hold on. I want to do it because I want to know.
Well, I have one comment on Sheep. I was listening to it today, and it's funny I can't remember the vocal melody, but
I got it.
There's like a feeling, and I think there's even like very similar bass and guitar parts to One of These Days from Metal. If you listen to One of These Days in Metal and Sheep, at the kind of like end parts, there's a lot of overlap. Like it's very similar song, or pieces are similar.
Yeah, Sheep is the one that's hopelessly passing your time in the grassland away.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's, you better watch out. And then he's got the, let's see. I'm trying to find the. And then it talks about, have you heard the news? The dogs are dead. You better stay home and do as you're told. Get out of the road if you want to grow old. It's just, I mean, this is, again, Roger Waters. I think he is a brilliant lyricist. I will say personally, I think his social commentary is some of the better. I don't necessarily always agree with his positions on things, but he's as a social commentary lyric writer, he's pretty fucking insane. Um, and then this is the one that goes wow wow, where he's doing the do 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 do
Yeah.
do, and that's what you're
That's
talking
the
about.
part, like one of these
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
Wow wow.
And the drum beat's like the same.
Yeah. And then yeah, it's like just a fucking amazing song. And I always thought that was the one that was 17 minutes, but after I listened to it, I'm like, oh, that's only 10 minutes. Wow, only 10 minutes. And then we do the wrap up at the end with Pigs on the Wing Part 2. I already conceded defeat, but this album just hits me hard every time. I think the musicianship on the tracks, the kind of elevated dynamics of what they're doing, the storyline, and how it relates to, the social commentary. And again, I have a bootleg of, I believe it was Toronto or Montreal. They were playing in '77. And someone threw, I believe, an M80 on the stage at Roger Waters. And he spit on someone from stage. And I have that recording.
Yeah.
And it's probably out on
hearing
YouTube.
about that.
Yeah, it's probably out on YouTube. And that was the thing that kind of sparked him creating the concept for the wall of like, man, these fucking people, man.
We're not that type of band.
I don't, the fans. Like, there's this wall between us now because, you're a bunch of fucking Neanderthals, You're coming to the show to get wasted and throw shit at the artists. And, I don't relate to you people anymore in any way, shape, or form. And that was during this tour for this album. And so, yeah, it's another masterpiece. Like you said, you could honestly say that the wall is there, although I think the wall is a bit bloated and could have been honestly a better one album, although in the context of back then they wouldn't have had enough space. But there is some filler on that album that I don't always gravitate towards. The great tracks are fucking mind-blowing.
Yeah.
The not so great tracks are kind of eh. I would say in all likelihood that Wish You Were Here fits the bill for these two albums that we just talked about. And I would also argue maybe that Metal is close, although it's a little bit more jammy. So
it's a fantastic album, but yeah, it would be it'd
one
be
of
the
these
fifth
days,
in line.
Yeah, one of these days, and Careful with That Axe, Eugene, and Pillow of is Pillow of Winds on there, right?
Careful with Your Axes and on Metal.
Oh, you're right. That's on
it's on
Obscure.
Umagoma.
What's that? Or Umagoma? Yeah, on Umagoma. You're right.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's like one of the good tracks on that album. That's why I remember.
I like this song. Grantchester Meadows on there is great.
Yeah.
The Rogers song and the rest of it, Careful That Axe is the only other one I like. That's one album I rarely ever pull out, And I'm not the biggest Adam Hart Mother lover either for some weird reason.
I never listened to it. I always just go back to these 5 and I just listen to them over and over, or 6. Yeah, I'll listen to basically. I'll rotate the 6 for the most part.
I do like.
I listen to Piper a lot. Actually,
I was gonna say I do like Piper quite a bit because it's that Syd Barrett madness, and it's kind of, very much a twisted psychedelic pop record.
That's awesome.
And then you've got. I do like Obscured by Clouds. That's kind of where I start getting the current.
I need to buy it. I thought I owned it. I was looking for it today, and
that's well worth owning, man. That's well worth.
Yeah,
owning.
I need to buy that.
So, any notes? I mean, I think we both agree that sequencing on both of these albums is what it is. It has to be this way. You couldn't. Of course, I couldn't hear these albums any way differently now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with this album, so I wouldn't say it's the definitive one. Definitive meaning perfect example of what to show someone, and that's how I, take the word. but I could definitely see the argument for it being the most artistically mature album they ever did.
There you go.
And you think about this, man. Do you think there could have been Porcupine Tree if Dogs didn't ever exist? Like, think of how influential that particular song was on that band, and even later era Opeth. Like, dude, listen to Time Flies.
It's
pretty
a total
much
ripoff. Yeah.
Pretty much Dogs, except a whole different, lyrical theme. But man, like, I feel like that song just it added that necessary darkness that kind of fueled a lot of some of the progressive metal like tones, I think, in a way.
Well, and Stevens talked about it openly that Pink Floyd's his favorite band of all time. And, you're absolutely right. It informed everything that they ended up doing. I mean, especially in the early days, like The Sky Moves Sideways, Burning Sky, and You Grow More
Up the
Beautiful.
Downstairs.
Yeah, Up the Downstairs. And then you get into Sky Moves Sideways. It's a total Pink Floyd ripoff album, essentially.
And it's awesome.
I love it. It's brilliant, but it should really be Porcupine Floyd is what it should be. And then even Signify has moments of Floydian-ness on it. And so it's funny because I was talking to Richard today, and he brought up about how, when the band went on hiatus, he wasn't expecting it to turn into a 12-year affair, but he did kind of expect 3 or 4 years because they were really burnt out after Fear. And he said if we'd have taken that break then, we could have come back and written a really good album, because he's not really high on The Incident. And neither am I, to be honest with you. I like it. I don't love it. But Time Flies is the one song there. I'm like, man, nah. It's such a ripoff of Dogs. It's like Steve had to have known that while he was writing it,
Yeah. And
I'm not pissing on anybody that likes that song.
I mean, I like it a lot. But yeah, you can see the influence for sure.
Yeah. Look at this guy arriving fashionably late here. We're almost wrapped up, Rick. Any other notes on the sequence of questions I gave you? Is there anything we did or didn't hit on?
Well, I guess you didn't get my full take on Animals.
Oh, yeah, you got to talk about it. Yeah.
Which I'll make it quick. I mean, I think from just like a business standpoint, I think it's real shitty that Gilmour has Dogs, which is almost half the album, and he only gets one credit. And then you basically divide Pigs on the Wing into two, and it equals the exact same amount of money. Like, that's pretty effed up, man. Like, so it's like you have this grand artistic statement from Gilmour with that song, and you kind of get shafted on the monetary end, and that kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I think that in itself is what led to a ton of tension, amongst other things. But like, just the business of this album, it's funny because it's talking about business and being critical of it.
Business, yeah.
But that really, like, I think added a lot of tension from what I understand. There's no skippers, but I will say that Dogs is so much an anchor of that album that if you took Dogs out, it would take so much out.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas you take one track out of Dark Side, which I would never recommend, it still can survive and be pretty high tier. So when you have less tracks, everything has to carry more weight. That it does, but Dogs really is the peak of that album. I don't listen to it as frequently as Dark Side. I always enjoy it. I think the fact that it is these longer tracks makes it a little harder to grab for. If you're ever in, you know how we are. Like, sometimes you're tight on time. You can't listen to a full album. Well, if that's the case, Animals isn't the thing I'm reaching for, because it's kind of that investment.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
Amazing album, 9.75, fantastic album. Like, it's only slightly less in terms of stature as Dark Side, but it's hard for me to be real critical of it because it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And actually, Rick just pointed out 50 years for Dark Side. Yeah. Wow.
Like,
It's almost as old as me, Rick. Almost, not quite. All you young cats, though, man. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I think that I own every Floyd album except Endless River. And I would say 80% of my listening comes from metal through Animals. And maybe The Wall gets thrown in there on occasion, but not often. Now, I remember when The Wall came out, and they only played a handful of cities in the U.S. initially. Big cities, L.A., Chicago, I think Philadelphia. But I lived in Houston at the time, and they did come there later, like on the second leg of it. And a couple of my friends went. I was in 8th grade, and I don't remember exactly why, because that would have been 1980,
Probably when 80 or 81, right?
and I'd already gone to see Kiss once in 79 and Rush in 80, and then I remember I had tickets to see Triumph in 80, and I pissed my mom off and didn't get to go. But I don't know why I can't tell you why I didn't like look into going to see that. I really don't know. And now looking back, hindsight being what it is, it's like, man, boy, did I fuck that up royally. You know what I mean? Like that was a gaff hardcore there, because not a lot of people got to see those shows, I mean, if you were of that age, and maybe the 20s and 30-year-old people and the 40-year-olds of that era got to see it, but not a lot of, teens got to go see those shows. And I could have been one of those people. And it kind of like, that's one of those ones that got away from me. That's like, oh man, that and not seeing Bowie and not seeing Queen are my biggest regrets. Even though I saw Floyd later on, I didn't see him with Roger when it would have mattered the most. You know what I mean? But let me just take a quick peek at my cheat sheet here. Sorry, hang on.
Oh, Rick.
Because I'm too old to remember things on my own. Where is it at here? The hell happened to it? Oh. Shit. Oh, here it is. So yeah, we kind of and we talk about production, mixing, mastering it. Of the time, they had the best production you could have, really.
Yeah, both albums.
And sonic consistency, amazing. Sequencing, amazing. Oh, I know, replayability. Like even you said, now you listened to it 4 times this week, or both of them, or just one?
Well, yeah, about both of them 4 times. It's. I don't think I listened to either of them in full this week. I just probably listened to them 4 times overall because I only had random pockets of time. So I was just trying to remember, and I even forgot a lot of times. I was like, oh, how does that vocal go in this one? But yeah, I was trying to like just know how to think of these things right offhand, because with Pink Floyd, it's like it really does kind of feel like soup. And like each song kind of goes into the next. So sometimes it's hard for me to like be like, oh, that song sounds exactly like this, especially when the songs are that long. Like I kind of like, oh, is that part in this song or the other one? I get that with Animals, but
a little bit.
I mean, I wouldn't listen to Animals more than like, and the thing is, I don't re-listen to albums like a shit ton. I do like hunt down new stuff a lot. I can listen to Animals like 2 to 3 times a year.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of feel that way about both albums, that, the replayability factor is pretty high on both of them. And now, I hadn't, just because I've got way too much other shit. But, once we decided to do this, I was excited because it was like, oh, cool, I get to go back. I'm forcing myself to go back and listen to Floyd. And I was wondering, how's that gonna fare with me?
Yeah.
And it went better than I could have anticipated because it was just like slipping on that old
They're
comfortable pair of
timeless, man. Yeah.
timeless, and and just you're like, man, these guys are fucking geniuses, genius musicians with genius producer. Well, they were the producers, but genius engineers utilizing the technology of the time to create music that is timeless. And this stuff, long after you were gone, dude, and you got a long ways to go before me. 60, 70, 100 years from now, this album will still be selling albums. Long after Roger's gone and long after Dave's gone. And, we lost Rick back. When was that?
I don't know.
2012, 14?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been almost 10 years now. And he was young. He was only like 65.
2008.
2008. Wow. So, and I think he was 65 when he died, right? Yeah. So we lost him pretty young, man. And it's kind of, kind of crazy. But a couple quick comments here. We got Rick coming in with the zingers. My underdeveloped self in my dad's ball sack remembers that album dropping finally like it was yesterday. Oh, come on, Rick. Now, I just don't believe that you knew what was going on when you were in your dad's ball sack. But, I could be wrong. Who knows? And Wade asked, what do we think of the remaster of the album that came out last year? I don't think I liked it as much. It was very dry. It took a lot of the reverb away. They took a lot of the what I would call the spacious atmosphere of it. I didn't love it. I'm not saying I hated it, but right away I noticed it, and I didn't. A lot of people loved it. I was like, yeah, man, I really loved the way it sounded before. Why'd they fuck with it? I don't understand why they did that. That kind of thing.
I have to listen to that. I didn't. I saw it on Spotify. I just kept going back to the original.
The original, yeah. And I'm not always a huge proponent of let's remix it because we can. And let's talk about this quickly. Roger Waters either just released or is releasing, I think it just came out, a revamp of Dark Side of the Moon, right?
Like a remaster remix?
Oh, no, re-recorded, man.
Really?
Yeah, hold on.
I'd be curious to listen to it, but I don't really get the point. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, let me pull it. Yeah, here it is. Roger Waters' Dark Side of the Moon.
So
here it is. Redux. Dark Side of the Moon Redux. And essentially it's stripped down versions of the songs. When he did the stripped down lockdown sessions, the 50th anniversary of the release was looming on the horizon. It occurred to me that Dark Side of the Moon could well be a suitable candidate for similar reworking, partially as a tribute to the original, but also to readdress the political and emotional messages of the whole album. I discussed it with Gus and Sean, and when we stopped giggling and shouting, "You must be fucking mad," at one another, we decided to take it on. I've not listened to it, so I really don't know what to say about that, Wade. If you guys are aware of that one, yeah, it's re-recorded. I haven't heard it.
Well, if it's just a matter of just being interesting, I mean, I'm interested. Is he really trying to replace it? No, that's the thing. Is like
No, I think he's reimagining it in sort of a more stripped down sense.
Which
that's the understanding I had of it.
It's when
I'm not sure
people are trying to like redo it like they felt like it was flawed to begin with. That's usually when I would get annoyed. Something like this, it's just like, okay. I mean, it's like a self-awareness thing.
And I wonder, I'm sure there's an answer out there somewhere. I'm wondering if the songs that were written by Gilmour and Wright on that album, which I got to look here quick. Was it don't have that handy. Do you have the credits
What
for who
on
wrote
Dark
what?
Side?
Yeah, Dark Side's credits. You have that?
No. I think it's a little more collaborative than the later albums, so it might be a little harder to tell.
I'm thinking that. See, I have some notes
All
here.
right, I have it. So
Okay.
what songs do you want to know?
Well, who wrote which songs on Dark Side?
This is according to All Music, and I already feel like I see something wrong here. But Breathe is David Gilmour, Waters, right? On the Run, it says Gilmour, Waters.
Yeah.
Time, it says everybody besides Nick Mason.
Okay.
Great Gig in the Sky, Claire, Richard Wright. Money,
Right.
Waters. Us and Them, Waters, Richard Wright. Any Color You Like, Gilmour, Mason, Wright.
Yeah.
Brain Damage, Waters. Eclipse, Waters.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there was a situation where, but I don't think he could do this. I was going to say where, you know, how the band sometimes the rights are owned by the label and they re-record it to get the rights back
Right, like Taylor
to
Swift.
that new version. I don't think that would be applicable here because you've got Waters can't take on ownership of songs that were co-written by those guys, no matter whether he reimagines it or not. In fact, it might be the exact opposite, that because he's re-recording it, they're going to get a cut of this anyways.
Yeah, they'll get the
They
publishing.
probably are. Yeah. So why he decided to do it, I'm not sure. I'm going to actually tomorrow maybe even do it. I might take a listen to it and sort of see where my head goes with that. But yeah, man. So we did it. We knocked out the Pink Floyd, and I'm glad you chose this. I will concede defeat. Victory is yours.
Thanks,
To the
sir.
victor goes the spoils. I got nothing for you, but much love.
Oh, appreciate it, man.
And I appreciate you doing it. And maybe we'll do another round of these down the pike in a month or 2 or 3, or probably 2 or 3, because I actually have people lined up through 22 episodes, and we're at number
Yeah, you got the rest of the year pretty much.
6. Probably the rest of the year filled up more or less.
Well,
At
you got to
2
hang out for some reason.
2 for week. Yeah, man. It's been a while. So, real quick on my front again, we got hopefully Kelly and Paul on Wednesday night. Hopefully, I'm waiting to. Kelly says he'll confirm tomorrow, so we'll let you know on that. Probably in the 10 o'clock range, I would think or hope. And then, because Paul's out in California. And then Thursday night's going to be Surge. We're going to do Queensryche. Sunday night, Eric Berg. I don't know whether we'll sneak anything else in there. No more deep dives or anything the rest of this month. I do have the 12th of October. Myself and Craig Bierhorst and Tom Draper are going to do the Rainbow catalog. So
Nice.
We'll be talking about Richie Blackmore's Rainbow and Rainbow, all 8 albums, and we'll see. Hopefully, a deep dive on Anathema, and hopefully, we're going to get back to Prog Metal Island. Are you going to be on that one?
We got to talk about it. I guess it depends on the date.
Yeah, sometime probably.
But it has to be prog metal, not just prog.
Not prog. We'll do a separate prog one.
Okay.
Prog metal. So it would be like Dream Theater, Porcupine Tree,
Haken,
Symphony X, that kind of stuff like that.
I don't know if I know if I like enough of that stuff. Honestly,
Is that you're not into that?
No, I like it, but I'm not as passionate about it. I don't know if I could do Desert Island for that stuff genuinely. I mean, if you would call Opeth prog metal, then yeah.
Oh yeah,
if you call
definitely.
Mastodon prog metal, then
definitely would call them for sure.
All right, then I can drum up some stuff.
Yeah, bands of that ilk for sure would definitely be part of the conversation.
Appreciate it, Rick.
And you could almost even put a band like Edge of Sanity in there, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
if you're loose with it, if it's like all Dream Theater clones, then I can't do it.
No, definitely not Dream Theater. No, not all Dream Theater. I mean, I would imagine one Dream Theater album will probably make my top 10 because there's one or two that are in that category. The rest of them wouldn't make it. So,
Yeah.
All right, Lee, hang on one sec. Just bear with me one moment here. I don't know Obsidian Kingdom. Who's that? Don't know them. Yeah, thanks to everybody that popped in tonight. I think we had 10 or 11 people at one point in time, and then everybody got bored. But it's not like a Iron Maiden or a Morbid Angel stream. Those get 20, 25 people. Liquid Tension. Yeah, that would probably fit. I would think so. We'll get to that at some point. I just don't know where we're gonna, how, when, where. My health is not doing too good the last 2 weeks or so, and I see my neurologist tomorrow, so it could be very interesting what happens this week. But anyway, people, thank you for stopping in tonight. Thanks for visiting Dad. Lee, thanks for hanging with me, and hang on 1 minute. We'll see you guys later.
Of course. See you guys.
All right, buddy. Thanks, man.